Thank you very much. It is delightful to be with you all this morning. It's a bright early morning for us. This side of my face was a little shaded, but as the light comes up, I will have light on this side of my face, probably by the end of my talk. Yeah, I'm delighted to join from Canada for this last Sunday of the year, which is one of my favorite times. Now, will you all judge me really harshly if I admit that I had to look on a map to find out where you all are? And what I learned is you are 3,000 miles away if I were to go directly east. And my guess is not many of you. Does anyone know where Nanaimo is, Vancouver Island? No. So I'm on Vancouver Island, which is in Canada. We are just sort of off the coast of Vancouver, but we're a really big island, actually. And our city is, we have about 100,000 people here, and we're what we call mid-island. We're about halfway up. So we're actually, Vancouver Island itself is just a little part of British Columbia, the province, but our island is bigger than Vermont and New Hampshire. So it's a pretty big place. So I am delighted. It sounds like we're having sort of similar cool, drizzly weather, and it's nice to be together. And I love how Zoom brings us together from however far in miles we are away. So I love the last Sunday of the year. I've always loved New Year's Eve and just that time that we can sort of punctuate our lives. If you ask somebody, what were you doing, June 5th of every year of your life? Unless that's your birthday, you probably have no idea. But we have those opportunities like New Year's Eve, where, if we think back, we can remember quite a few of our New Year's Eves. And I'm not really into big celebrations. Honestly, I don't want to stay up till midnight. And then, yeah, that's not my thing. But what I love is I love the opportunity to reflect, to just sort of take stock on the year and kind of plan and set intention for the next year. So the CSL Global themes this month, they were talking about sticking the landing. And this week, their theme was expanding at the top. The idea that principle knows no precedent, that there is unlimited opportunity, that this can be that reminder of our growth potential. And I'm going to bring a little bit of a different slant to that today. But I see you guys are doing a burning bowl celebration ritual coming up, which I think is fantastic. And hopefully this will get sort of prime you for thinking about that. So I learned about a new philosopher this year, and it's really changing the way I think about a lot of things. And I really think this philosopher should be adopted into the New Thought movement. I think she checks all the boxes, and she adds a beautiful piece to our movement and our teaching. So this philosopher is a woman named Simone Weil. She was very, very interesting and had a very short life. She lived from 1909 till 1943. And what's important about that is she was a secular Jew and she was born in Paris. So she lived through two world wars in sort of the heart of the conflict. She grew up, she was a philosopher. She was one of the first women to study at a very prominent philosophical school in Paris. And she was an educator, so she was definitely after my own heart. And she was an activist. She was a big part of the labor movement. So, why am I telling you about Simone Weil? Probably her most famous quote is that attention is the purest and rarest form of generosity. And that really is a theme for Simone. She talks a lot about attention and attention in a lot of different ways. So that's what I think this is an opportunity for at this time of year is to evaluate where our attention is and where we'd like it to be. So um, basically, if we think about it, if you think about your morning, it's still early, but whatever happened between you getting out of bed and being here, there were a lot of things that happened. You may have had interactions with people. You may have had a cup of coffee. You may have stepped outside for a minute and gone for a walk. You might have pets in the house, whatever that is. So you may have done some spiritual practice. But if you think about it, there are a multitude of things that you could have paid attention to. You could have paid attention to the drizzly rain, especially if you don't like that. You could have paid attention to, if you stubbed your toe this morning or were feeling really tired, or you might be somebody who wakes up and focuses on gratitude. So in any moment, we have this multitude of places we can put our attention. And Simone Weil's work was really around empowering us and encouraging us to choose where we put that attention. And she really talks about attention in a different way. She talks about attention as a letting go, an opening up. She says, often we talk about attention as a leaning in and paying attention to what's happening right now. Whereas she looks at attention as an opening and a focusing, like getting very present with someone or something and just being completely open. The Buddhists talk about that beginner's mind. It's having that beginner's mind settling fully into a place or being with a person or a situation. So that's how she approaches attention. And in fact, as a teacher, she would take her students out. She wouldn't give out grades, and she would take her students out and they would find problems of geometry in nature. And she didn't really care if they solved the problems. She just wanted them to fully immerse themselves in the problem and to pay attention and be open. And you can imagine that was pretty upsetting for the administrators at that time, who were all about handing out some grades. But it was a really interesting, I think, perspective on settling in. And I know for myself, if I see a problem in front of me, I like to fix it, especially if it's a problem that makes me uncomfortable. So I like to jump in. I am a fixer. I got answers. I got plans. I can get it done and I can fix it. But boy, when I just sit and I open, there is a greater wisdom that's available to me that I usually bypass in all my get or doneness. So attention can be this very broad sense of actual presence. So I thought I'd read a little bit. So Robert Zaretsky wrote about Simone Weil. And he said, to attend means not to seek, but to wait, not to concentrate, but instead to dilate our minds. We do not gain insight.
Did you freeze for a minute? Uh-oh. That was so good. I mean, it is so good. Are you there? Okay, we can't hear you.
How's that?
That's perfect. Oh my gosh, you did that
right?
just to keep us in suspense. That was so good.
I'm not sure what happened to my AirPods, but here we go. Okay, so this is the quote by Simone Weil. She said, in every school exercise, there is a special way of waiting upon truth, setting our hearts upon it, yet not allowing ourselves to go out in search of it. There is a way of waiting when we are writing for the right word to come of itself at the end of our pen, while we merely reject all inadequate words. Isn't that beautiful? It's an opening and allowing. And I think that is so important in our movement. And I'm sure you guys have talked a lot about Thomas Troward and his idea of reciprocity. And that's a really big piece that I don't feel like we talk about that much, where we talk about us and our creative power, but the reciprocity that Thomas Troward talks about is also an opening and receiving insight, receiving the wisdom, and then creating from that place. So we're in this constant reciprocal relationship with spirit and our higher wisdom.
So I really love that Simone Weil talks about that as sort of a moving away. It's the picking off the things that don't fit, not the pushing forward into things. So, and this actually, if we look at how our minds work, this is how children's minds grow. So our brains are born with billions and billions and billions of connections, and growing up and learning is actually a pruning. They call it synaptic pruning. So our minds are learning how to focus on the pieces that we need, because at the beginning we just take everything in, and then we learn how to focus so that our attention can get sharper in that way. Sort of like a laser is that really focused light. So it's an interesting, that way of paying attention is very similar. As we choose and pay attention, we open to the wisdom. And isn't it great? I love that song, Auld Lang Syne. And that is a song that talks about that very same thing. The first line, should old acquaintance be forgot and never brought to mind. Again, that's an opportunity for us to choose where we put our attention. Where have we had our attention and where do we want it to be? And Simone Weil goes on to say that attention can actually is a form of prayer. And this is what she had to say. She said, attention taken to its highest degree is the same thing as prayer. It presupposes faith and love. Absolutely unmixed attention is prayer. If we turn our minds towards the good, it is impossible that little by little the whole soul will not be attracted thereto in spite of itself. Isn't that a beautiful thought? It's not us out pursuing, it's us opening and us having this pure attention. And going back to her original quote, isn't that the most beautiful form of love? To be able to just give that pure attention to another person. I mean, honestly, that can be the most healing thing. A lot of medical research shows that healing has a lot to do with a person's relationship with their caregiver. So if we move to this time of year as an opportunity to reflect on where we are putting our attention, this can be an opportunity to really sort of transform things. And why this is so interesting to me is because I have to admit that in this last year, I got a little off track with my attention. I, as a Canadian, got completely consumed watching the news with the American election. I spent so much time, my attention, I allowed, because every time you turn on any type of media, that was the topic of conversation. But not even the whole thing. Even the media was pulling us into a few very sort of inflammatory issues. And so I was drawn into that. I do believe I want to be aware of what's happening, but I allowed my attention to just be focused in on something that honestly I have no control over. I don't even have a vote in the election. And when I reflect on that time, what it was doing, I was filled with fear and concern, and my attention on that one thing, it was not making me feel good. And honestly, it wasn't helping any situation. Whereas I recognize I work in social justice, I work in education. When I hone my attention in closer to home, to the places where I actually can have an influence, I feel better. I can see the positive impact I can have, and I actually do influence things. So to me, this was this perfect reminder of I get to choose where my attention is. The news network doesn't get to choose for me. I can allow myself to be drawn. Other people in my life don't get to choose my attention. I get to really get clear on where my attention will be. And I know for myself, that's what I've kind of come to is this next year, I am going to be aware of what's going on in the world, and I'm going to hone my attention in on those areas where I think, boy, I can make a difference here. So as we listen to Auld Lang Syne on New Year's Eve, I invite you all to take an opportunity to reflect on where has your attention been in this past year? Has it been serving you well? Has your attention been sort of pulled in a direction that's not working? And where would you like your intention to be in the next year? And then to think about, how do you become fully present and dilate your mind and pay attention in that way of not running to an answer, but being fully present and allowing insight. So that is what I wanted to share with you. I love this time of year. I love this new concept of attention, and I am going to really, really explore it for myself. And I hope that there's some part of that that speaks to you as well. So thank you very much.